you know if Jack signed up?
I don't think he did actually.
Okay, he was a resident Oakland expert, and I
I
think one of
know,
the design
right?
advisors was too.
Yeah. I'll definitely share the recording with them.
And I know that Roby won't be able to be in attendance. He has a conflict.
Okay.
That's
It's Greg.
Morning, Greg.
Good morning. Okay, I wasn't sure if I was on mute. Good morning. Good to see you all.
Nice to see you. Morning. Traveling today? It looks like you're home.
I'm home. I'm mostly working from home these days.
Oh, nice.
Although we're looking at going back to the office more regularly. So it'll be an interesting change. I think everyone's going to be kind of hybrid, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Greg, was the last time I saw you on Public Square in the fall or in the summer when you were with Mike Dostal?
Yeah, I think so. I've been traveling quite a bit. So I cover national territory, and so for starting about that time when I bumped into you, I was on the road. I'm on the road just about every week right now. It's been a little bit much actually.
Oh, man.
Yikes.
So
Morning,
I
Professor
haven't
Ganning.
been in Cleveland that much. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll give it another minute or two for to see if anybody else hops on.
Melanie, do you want me to share my screen now or do you want me to wait?
Ken, we should probably, did you want to do your kickoff first before sharing his screen?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay.
Probably give it another minute or two. There's Rich. Morning, Rich. Melanie, did Alex Long sign up?
I don't think she mentioned that she was planning on attending either.
Okay.
So I connected with her yesterday and she didn't mention it. She has the link though, so she may jump on. Okay, well, I think we could probably get started if everybody on the team who's planning to present is here.
The whole team here? Okay, awesome. Well, I'll kick it off. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 ULI Hines Student Competition. Breakfast is what I wrote down, but we're not in person this year. I'm Ken Kalinchuk. I'm a project director at Project Management Consultants. I participated in the competition in 2016 as a graduate student at Cleveland State, and I've been helping mentor the finance students and the teams in the competition over the last 5 years. It's been such a pleasure to work with this team this year of Kent State, CUDC, and architecture graduate students, and Jonathan from Cleveland State. I'd like to thank ULI Cleveland sponsors, the Kent State, CUDC, Cleveland State University, and every sponsor of today's presentation for helping connect the students to form this great team, to mentor students during the competition, and for hosting us today. Special shout out to Alex Long, Professor Joanna Ganning, Professor Roby Simons, Terry Schwartz, and Mara. And I haven't pronounced your last name before, so I'm not going to botch it. And everyone else who helped the team throughout this. This year was really exciting. It was a project site in Oakland, and Mara and the team will talk a little bit more about that. But Oakland has undergone a lot of challenges and changes over the last, several decades. And the team was tasked with a really interesting site and a really interesting finance challenge. And of all the teams we've worked with, or I've worked with in the past 5 years, I think this team pushed the boundaries of, urban design and of finance to try to come up with a really interesting solution for the challenges of the site and that the city of Oakland were facing. And I'm really excited for you to see their final work product today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mara, and I'm happy to help the team answer questions at the end. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Maida. I'm an urban designer at the Cleveland Urban Design Collaborative. And as well as Ken, I was an advisor, but for the design part. And it was a pleasure to work with the team and get to know a little bit more about the ULI competition. Jonathan, if you want to share the screen, we can start the presentation. But as Ken mentioned, the site for this year was Oakland, and the city is a great city when it comes to visiting and all those things. It faces a lot of different social problems and issues, but at the same time, it has a great potential for the future. And I think this project with the students show what we could be doing in the old Oakland in the future. So I think I'll pass to Jonathan and then we can start. Thank you.
Actually, I think Justin, you're in control. So you want to kick us off and
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Yeah, so here's the location of our site. In the red was the required areas that they originally gave us, and in the green areas where we were able to expand beyond that. Some of the initial challenges that we saw with this site, obviously, were the highway that cut through. But then even within the red area, a lot of that was like a former jail and sheriff's office and sort of police administration that no longer was able to serve that function. And so part of what we were trying to do is figure out what to do with that space. So I'm just going to jump into an abbreviated narrative with this. So our project is called Interchange, offering everyone a chance to breathe. And Interchange provides a perspective into what connections communities can make when the barriers of the past and present are dismantled. Our site will act as a case study for the city of Oakland to show what opportunities materialize with the removal of the 2 freeways through the site. The Wellness Center and library are the acts of adaptive reuse and restorative justice. Here we are able to foster a community where everyone is offered a chance to breathe. And then just a really quick diagram to show what the highway, how it interferes with our site and what we're actually looking to do to take it out. And then as we move forward, you'll see how we're able to sort of use that opportunity then, for a really exciting proposal.
Yeah, and then moving forward, we this is just like our overall site plan, and then on the left you can see the key kind of representing what the buildings are. And so our main focus when we started was the central area from buildings 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is what we've been referring to as the core. So focusing more on fixing these places such as the police station to kind of bring it more into a communal sense. So we have like a library, community center, recreation. And then moving past that from buildings 5 to 11, we focus more on the residential buildings. And then from there, we have commercial, hospitality, and transit stations. And we wanted to focus on more of a communal setting by removing the highway and then opening up these spaces between buildings, and then having pedestrian circulation to move freely through the site without having a hindrance of the highway blocking views and then also blocking sunlight. And then these are just some human scale renders looking at the site and how we envisioned it with the landscape incorporated with the building that Saba will talk about a little bit more, but then seeing how we kind of wanted to focus on these like brighter colors and then using existing buildings, but then modifying them with newer facades.
Hello. As you can see on the site plan, we try to increase the greenery as much as possible. This increase was linear at the margins of the blocks, in clusters, as well as in parks and defined open spaces. We also try to use fruit trees and as you saw in last images, these trees formed an orchard path. We try to pay attention to the resiliency and select trees that are native or have a good compatibility with the environment and do not require much irrigation due to the climate. The other point is about choosing deciduous and evergreen trees so that users and residents can feel the greenery around them in all seasons. In a seasonality chart that you can see here, while trying to pay attention to all mentioned cases, species with different colors in different seasons are chosen so they can bring freshness to the environment in all seasons. In general, we try to invite people to public places, open spaces with the help of vegetation and water elements, taking into account the climate conditions. Certainly, our only goal was not to create a good visual vision, and we try to engage other users' senses as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing to that. Saba mentioned an orchard, and that's something that we saw as a really nice opportunity to sort of reach out to the community and provide, at least to some extent, some food resources while also allowing for some green space to develop. That was something that we got really excited about this project.
Good morning. So my name is Jonathan Ciesla, and we are going to transition into the phasing and then the financial portion. So I know it's not readable, but the graphic on the left, the table, is basically just meant to be a visual representation of how we broke down the square footage in terms of the phasing approach. The phasing approach was key in terms of what are we going to provide, when are we going to provide it, and then that way we could pay for the cost as well as try to get revenue early on to help supplement other pieces of the development. The phase one, which is in the blue, lasted 2 years. Every phase is a 2-year piece. The project was starting year 0 in 2022, going to 2023. That was year 0. And then we held until 2033. So we held for roughly a 10-year period, and then we're to sell the whole property. What we did is focused in first and primarily on affordable and market rentals, some hotel. We wanted to make sure we had sales for both market and luxury. We actually divvied up the residential markets to be both affordable, because that was, I believe, was a 25% minimum required by the brief. So we did affordable, and then we had market. The market in the Oakland area is very different and much more healthy than Cleveland's. And then we shifted into the different renovations. The public buildings were really important to us. So, excuse me, the orchestra, concert hall, library, those pieces were begun first. And then we also assumed that the highway we weren't paying for. We felt that both the 880 and the 980 highways would be covered by the latest infrastructure bill. And with that priority, there's been talks in the area of removing Highway 880. So the idea was, okay, let's assume that the feds are going to push that priority. They're going to up high-speed rail. We included a BART station within this. And the goal was then, all based off of that, we would acquire that vacant land that used to be under the highway. We get it at a little bit of a better discount. Next slide. So here's an overview of the community benefits. I'm not going to read through every single one, but just to point out, one of our goals, or one of the brief's goals that we also took to heart, was to address unsheltered individuals. So you'll see the 3-bullet refers to the House of Dignity. Now, that is a current veteran shelter that we not only took from 15,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet, but we also helped to assume that not only was it going to be for veterans, but other unsheltered individuals. And then we wrapped into the use ideas, the greenhouse orchard as both to function as partially an urban farm. so that individuals could get some training. There's at least one urban farm north of this area that is for profit. So the idea is, can we transfer job skills while providing housing? And also to capitalize on the idea of the weather in the area. We then also, as you can see, the last three are all about transforming. It was mentioned that the concept of restorative justice, the idea of taking this, what it was an interchange into an intra-change, an internal change, and then shifting the jail, the courthouse, these previous county buildings that were used for more institutionalized racism, and then focusing on, can we build wellness, an art gallery, having small business administration, incubator spaces, etc. Next slide. And then these are just some generalized breakdowns of how the square footages and the phasings are. In general, you can see there was something in our blood where we needed to keep as much existing as possible. We really focused on keeping 82% of all buildings. And so instead of just a urban renewal, let's level it and start over, we said, hey, can we use what's there and then make it something? In regards to the phasing program, it divvied up. What we were able to accomplish though is that between the different phases, there was roughly like 1.8 million square feet, almost 1 million, and then 1.2 in the third phase. So we're able to keep it relatively even, which then also helped us attack the different areas. And as the highway was assumed to come down in the later years is when we would get this beautiful vacant land to supplement and put into the phasing. Next slide. Overall, you can see how the square footage by phase break down. And then the total programming was a lot on housing. Housing's always needed, both market rate and affordable. You can see luxury is included in the market. So if you're hunting for it, you won't find it. Then civic, library, those are the pieces with the wellness center, the recreation center, the orchestra space for Oakland Orchestra. And then we also were able to include the other office, hotel, as well as retail spaces. And then given the nature of the area, we did reduce the current street network and actually took out a piece of street and then added in instead some structured parking as well as some surface parking. But we really wanted to give people the feel of walkable, movable from a pedestrian standpoint, as well as also from a not needing a lot of resources to live and use the area. Next slide. The sources. So overall, primarily it was bank loans. We did use developer equity. We actually used a mix of not only our out-of-pocket, which was the 333 million, but we assumed that we were going to take a developer's fee of 5% of the different project phases and then put 50% of that back into the project. We also looked and were anticipating 3% of government and nonprofit assistance, partnerships with the Oakland Library, the orchestra, the city of Oakland, and then tapping into, FTA's 5307 and RAISE grant that was for the BART station itself, USDA and SBA for the small business and the orchard, and then the new market tax credits for the urban farm. We then broke down a loan and we just did one loan per phase given the time constraints. Next slide, please. And then the uses, development costs with loan fees. Loan fees were assumed at 1% of each phase's loan. And then we retired them as the phases went through. Sidewalks and landscaping, as well as the public buildings. You can see we had a very large public tilt. We just felt it was really important that the space should be back again about the people and not just making money or maximizing profit. We really wanted to maximize social welfare as well. And then the next slide. Overall, at the end of the day, between income and cash flows, we were able to get an unleveraged internal rate of return of 20% and a leveraged IRR of 22%. Next slide. That's it. So I think we're just going to open it up to questions for everyone and let us know thoughts, questions, ideas, and any of us will be happy to jump in.
Thank you, Jonathan and team. A question I had thought of as you were presenting, I don't think we've ever really asked before, but it's a student competition. You're all students, you have some professional experience, but you're looking to get more in these areas. Maybe you haven't worked on an interdisciplinary team before. If you want to comment on some of the things you've learned during this process, especially if you're working, across disciplines with each other, something you learned.
Yeah, I can start. I think the thing that I've learned the most is just from like Jonathan's everything that he researched was definitely pretty foreign from what we do in like the design setting in school. Focus a lot more on the like aesthetic qualities and then like the communal and social aspects of design. But it was interesting to have like these limitations through like financial means and then how we can kind of work around them. And then it's in turn makes a product a lot more creative.
Yeah, just adding on that, it was a constant, I don't want to say struggle because that has a negative connotation. That was just a constant focus because we just wanted to really push these ambitious projects and designs, but then also you have to have some level of financial reasonability. And so there was a lot of sort of negotiation with that I thought ultimately went really well.
And I have to say, what was intriguing is I worked with three Master's of Architect students and one landscape architect. And it was little old me who has an urban planning background. And then I've been getting more into the urban finance. They were really great and accommodating, but what kept happening was, given the time frame, is we would move forward and then we would hit a spot where we're like, that doesn't feel right. That's not working. That's not going to work. And the cascade of work that created every single time for all of us was really astounding. So it was like touching the pro forma, and as some of the people who have worked with pro formas on here, you would touch one piece and then suddenly it was cascaded through. I kept thinking in my head, the old adage, there's no such thing as a bad pro forma because no one's going to show something that doesn't work. But at the same time, we were able to communicate really well. We were kind of learn to speak each other's language a bit. And then there was this really good group, we want to do this, we're going to make this happen. And so there was a lot of pull through. And I just don't think that synergy necessarily happens as easily, because I'm curious as to how often a planner, a finance person, architect all can sit down and talk. So it also led me to believe that it seems like the more we engage with each other, the better the product can be at the end.
Yeah, and then something else that I was thinking about as you were saying that is that we were always interested in so many different elements. That's something that was continuously told to us throughout the process is get the main concept and use that as a driving. And we were always so interested in so many different things that it was tricky to sort of reel that in and have that be a thing as opposed to many things.
Well, my compliments. I tell you, I've like Ken, I've been involved with the Hines competition for some time, and from what I can tell, from what I've seen from the work product and from the interaction here, it feels like you guys really nailed it. And that hasn't always been the case. We've had teams that weren't nearly as functional, and despite everybody being good people. Sometimes people just don't work well together. And based on the outcome here and hearing you all speak, I've been very impressed. So congratulations. One thing I would ask is was there anything that was a flashpoint, right? Like where somebody said, "Hey, we've got to do this," and what was there something in this project, and how did you resolve that?
I'm going to speak to, there were two, in my opinion. One was the highway. We went back and forth. We were going to keep it. We were all like, hey, it doesn't make sense to, why would you get rid of a highway? And then we started delving into it and some of the political will and all that. And also, we wanted to go bold. So it was like, okay, are we going to do this? And we were all like, yeah, we're going to do this. And then we talked to Ken or Myra, and then we had the range of responses. Are you nuts? Are you sure? Let's do everything, you know? And so it was really intriguing to see that we, at one point in time, we didn't please everybody. We all had an idea, but like we kind of knew what we were doing and that it was a little out there. And then another flashpoint that I remember specifically that I thought was just crazy intriguing is, it's a little hard to see, but at the very end of the block, we had this vacant space, and we were thinking of possibly doing subdivision housing to get mixed house or whatever. But this space happened, and then we had this hole, and it created this robust discussion. But at the same time, after our second or third design review, we're like, we have to do something, and I think we had 3 days to do it. So there were also these moments where it's like none of us in good conscience could be like, no, it'll be fine. And sure, it didn't end up perfect, but there were those moments where it was like, I can't sleep at night if I know this exists. And so it was just really intriguing.
Another point that I know we struggled with a lot was, if you want to go back to the site plan, Justin, was the prison that which is on building number 0, which we turned to a Philharmonic Hall. And so we were really struggling with this idea of like, what does a prison represent? And it's kind of anti-community and was like a place where people didn't want to go. And this was kind of our feeling at the site as a whole, more of like this government or like police force that was like running this site where it didn't have any communal sense. So talking about the the restorative social justice we were trying to implement was taking these notions of these buildings that people wouldn't really want to go to, or like this association of it for the site as a whole, and then transforming it into like more of communal spaces. So like the Philharmonic Hall and then the library and community center, like these more like communal meeting centers where people from all over could go here and enjoy either like a play or a musical or just a place to like interact with others.
Yeah, and I think elaborating further on that sort of core space, something that we would have been allowed to do, but was kind of were maybe hesitant a little bit about, is that ULI in their brief mentioned that we could just apply a base rate for demolition costs and such. But looking at that core space, practically to be able to demolition that was going to be a huge endeavor. And so we kind of got to the point where we had to figure out what can we do with these spaces. And sort of speaking on the prison and the Philharmonic Hall, that was a space that we, like, how many functions can a prison really be transformed into? And one of the sort of big flashpoints, I think, in our conversations was looking at a precedent, the Philharmonic Hall in Hamburg, Germany. I don't know who's familiar with that, but it's an older like warehouse that then the Philharmonic is on top, and the warehouse is then parking. And so we kind of saw the jail, one of the few sort of transformative functions of the prison itself would be a parking space. And then on top of that, we could have this new sort of gemstone of the city, a real, like a face in some ways, an identifiable moment that again just completely transforms the perception of the area and like what this city is representing in itself.
And then I just noticed in the chat that kind of in line with what we're talking about is Manuel had asked if the idea of restorative justice was mentioned, you know, can development play such a role in society? Just to speak to that briefly, we really felt it could, because the whole concept here was transforming the current built environment. So since we did focus on redevelopment, it's anybody can erase, or you can try to erase. We can level, we can ignore, we can pretend, but pretending hasn't worked so well, and ignoring hasn't worked so well in terms of policy or some of the repercussions. So the idea was, okay, how do you heal? So we felt restorative justice from the standpoint of, okay, well, what was unjust? And you've got these buildings, the jail, the administration, it was a sheriff's building. And it was these large concrete rejecting the individual. We just want to put you here if you're bad kind of a feeling. And then also the highways. The highways have a historical nature of dividing communities that weren't considered worthy or valuable because it was people of color or low income or a mix of both. So it was, okay, how do we erase the scars? How do we start to kind of give the land back? And then what's the opposite of incarceration and holding? Well, it's opening up, it's community, it's space, it's people, it's breathing. And so that's where the kind of the breath idea came from too, and why green space was so necessary. I mean, there were a few times I was like, do we need all of that green space? And you know, they stood by it, and Saba was just fantastic about levels of landscape architecture that I've never even bothered to think about, like how things grow. I'm like, that's nice, but thank God you're here. And so adding a whole nother dimension to what the land was. So it just was really intriguing about how do we put in things that are the antithesis of what was there, and that maybe we could use development to create that. We all very much had that principle.
That is great. We have one more question from Melanie. If you had more time, is there anything that you would change?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, the whole project, I felt like we were pretty like short on time, which is definitely like the notion of it, and it did push us to constantly be on our toes with the design. But I think I would have liked to have more of an integration of like mixed use program within these buildings. Because I feel like a lot of what we had was kind of just like an overall theme of it. Like this will be more of a communal space or a philharmonic building. But I would have liked to try to implement more of like mixed use spaces within each of these buildings so they could kind of so they could connect more on the human scale and programmatic scale.
Yeah, and I think going off of that, something that we kind of discussed a number of times that ultimately didn't come to fruition, mainly because of time, is this sort of the movement from green space to building and what that looks like, especially at the ground level. In a nice climate like this, it seems like there were a lot of opportunities to be able to move through. And you can see some opportunities that we had. We were able to punch out this sort of back, I don't know if you can see my mouse in the top left corner, the sort of back alley and such. We had some moments of that, but I think being able to push that farther, I think from a design standpoint, was the next big leap that we would have taken.
And then for me, I felt like we had a good product. What bothers me to this day is you can't really see it too well, but if anyone gets into the pro forma and you look at the hotel, the last hotel we built is like 1,000 rooms. We built a Vegas size hotel on a strip of land that probably can't support it, but that was also the hole we ran into at the end.
Yeah, and I would say going off of that, something I was going to mention briefly, while that is true, we probably wouldn't be supported. To the south of our site, we're assuming that the proposal for the new Oakland Athletics ballpark actually does go through, and it's like a quarter of a mile south of our site. Just north of the site is the Oakland Convention Center. Jack London Square is to the southeast, and so we thought that sort of being this sort of center point that ties some of those things together and providing hospitality resources that a lot of that would fill in, and also just like being this nice new space, that's something that people would be really interested in. But yeah, I think about that hotel too a lot.
Well, and I think the intriguing thing too was how much work went into that you just don't see because of the discussions necessary to get to a place to do it. Like how a developer walks into an area and just builds something blows my mind, because so often it was, okay, well, we'll do this. Well, will it work in the market? Well, you know, just some of those basic ideas, the community, the support, that type of stuff, and how much ideas need to be fleshed out at certain weird granular levels before we could even get to just a basic building. what design, what elements, what it was going to look like, how the whole thing is going to be cohesive. So it was also the interdependent nature of it. It was just constant talk and constant communication.
Yeah, and there were moments where we were adding things, but then there were moments where we were pulling things back and taking them away. To the north, where we developed, for a lot of time, we were looking at this sort of 3 to 5 story residential over commercial space, and that was something that we really liked from a design and an urbanistic standpoint, but ultimately with the numbers of the pro forma and such, it just wasn't making sense to do it that way. And so that's something that we ultimately had to cut out. So it's sort of that balance as well.
Hey, Saba, is there anything you would change or add to the conversation? I don't want you to get off scot-free here.
I don't know, but I think because of each elements are really connected to the landscape. So I was thinking maybe if you could have more time that all design could be completed, and then we have time to improve the landscape, because landscape should be the landscape design should continue parallel to all of these elements. And by changing each of that, the landscape will change. So maybe more time to just designing, to just connecting these different spaces and the users together better as access or connections.
That's awesome. We have one more question. Did you guys have conversations about building materials, green space, art, moral items, or you felt would be important to have with the overall development vision?
One thing I'm going to throw in there was I have never said a string of words as often as I did during this project to the architects, where I'm like, I don't know what this means, but this is what RS means is telling me. So just tell me what I need to use as a number here. And so some of the materials we got into was a level I was like, I don't even know what we're talking about, but it was really intriguing from a cost standpoint, because it was the sliver, the difference between some of the different pieces. I know the green space was hugely important as we've laid it out. And then one of the green space pieces also that we were so focused on was not only the orchard, but the idea of trees and movement and places to relax and sit. I know I didn't get into any art or mural discussion, so I don't know if any of the architects, I know you guys talked about everything from facades to what windows to.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, art and murals was one of the first sort of things that I remember looking into. I know that there's quite a bit of those within the area, but then there's this sort of hole at our site where a lot of them just aren't there, and so that's something that I think we would have expanded and explored on a bit more as well. In terms of materials, sort of expanding on that, a lot of the site that is existing, and you saw we're keeping 83% of it, a lot of that is concrete. However, we felt that with the new developments in a seismic zone and earthquake zone, steel frame structures made more sense. And so part of what we were trying to figure out, I don't know if we hit on it exactly, but we were trying to figure out was sort of a way of redeveloping concrete and adding steel frame and making it cohesive. And so a lot of those conversations were happening throughout the entire tour.
And seismic. I've never had a conversation about seismic before, but because it was just given the area and I guess what's going on in San Francisco and some of the different areas, it's, what are we building on, how high, that type of stuff. And it was an interesting conversation because it was always like, well, I want to do this. Well, can the market support it? I don't know. What do you want to do? And there's just constant kind of back and forth. So
Yes, that's great. Justin, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to answer the question, the last question that Alex had asked. Well, I think 4 out of the 5 of us are not going to be in grad school next year. But I think personally, 3, okay. But I think personally, if I was, I'd be interested in doing this again, especially knowing, sort of being grounded in the project and sort of knowing how to approach it without it just being completely novel.
I know for myself, I'm after you, Justin.
Yeah, I just also wanted to mention, because out of it, we do have a 5th member who can't be here because she's teaching a class right now. Jazana Kubashova. She was tremendously helpful through this entire time, especially with like visuals and stuff. It was always like, we have this good vision, and then she always took it 3 steps further. So I just wanted to shout her out too, since she's not here.
Personally, I will still be in grad school, so there's a good shot that I'll do this next year. Because what I found it taking was not only concepts and ideas, but cementing them and forcing me to deal with them. So it wasn't just I could stumble through a test or an idea. It was, okay, what the hell is IRR and why do we keep talking about it over and over and over again? And you couldn't get into theory too, because it was the practical piece too. So it was like, okay, whether or not it's a good measure doesn't matter. This is what the industry understands, or this is what people care about. And so it was also adapting. So we couldn't get down to that theoretical, well, I want to really, no, just give me a number. Okay, here's a number, cool. And just moving forward, it created that urgency. So it was really good about shifting that, as well as also, honestly, and in the nicest way possible, understanding why there's so many different disciplines and masters and programs, because you think, oh, I could do a little planning, I can do a little architecture, but as we got into it, it's like, I can't do that, or I can't do that. So it was really seeing the pieces and why and what people study and understand and the full depth of it. So it was just really enlightening.
That's awesome. Do you guys have the others, Evan and Saba? Do you have something? Do you think you would do it again? I think Saba is still in grad school next semester, next year, right?
Yes, I have still 1 year, and yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm eager to participate for next year.
That's great. We have one more question. Has this experience changed or evolved anyone's careers, intentions, or aspirations?
Personally, I don't think so. I feel like I'm pretty resolute in my career aspirations. However, it maybe clarifies building and establishing some of those relationships across discipline. That's always something that's nice to get better at every time. So I'll answer that in a round way.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet, honestly, if it's changed my career aspirations, but it definitely informed me like heavily in like different career paths that I could potentially go into. And also just like it was nice just being situated in a more like realistic setting, having to deal with like boundaries and ceilings that I normally wouldn't encounter.
Overall, I just started a Master's of Science in Urban Studies at Cleveland State, and I'm doing about 1 class a semester for fun. So what I found that this did was just bring some more of the concepts into focus that I could bring into my current professional life, as well as just give thought to how the industry works. Like everybody thinks they understand how development functions, but as you get into it, you're like, what is this mess? How does anybody ever get something built? This is insane. And suddenly, as you walk through it, it's understanding it, but then also holding the value to it. So it was much more, I found that I was much more capable at finance than I thought I was. So that was a little like, oh my, because here are all these people looking to me. I don't have a finance background. I have an urban studies background and urban planning. And so they're asking about market. I'm like, I don't know, look at, sure. So it was really like, wow, this is, I've run into also a few people since then where it's like they're doing finance or architecture or different things and they're coming from the complete opposite of backgrounds. And so it was like how the pieces fit together. And that you can bring to the table pretty much anything. I mean, at the end of the day, most of us can use Excel, you know? So it's like, okay, simple, but much more capable than I anticipated. And then like having like Ken and Maira as advisors, as well as some different faculty members that were accessible. It was like, oh, wait, I'm sorry. Like, you seriously think I get this? They're like, yeah, you get this. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then you just move forward. So it was really, it's complex, but it's much more attainable.
Yeah, thank you. So Terry Schwartz made a question too, and I think it could be for all of us. Some of the student teams from other universities has a lot of advisors. And are there other ways we, the universities, can support the future ULI teams? So if anyone has a suggestion or something, will be appreciated.
I think we could have all the ULI members actually just give us money just for completing it. Like, I think that would be a great start because it was just shocking the amount of work we signed up for. But at the end of the day, there was so many, regardless of the amount of advice you guys were able or willing to provide, I just didn't have the question, or I had no idea. Was like, I need to get my way through this. And then after you're in it, it was a lot of, God, if I would have known this 3 days ago, I would be ahead. So there's a lot of chasing rabbits down rabbit holes. And I felt like that was just kind of the nature of it. So it was just the accessibility was extremely important and helpful. Ken, I texted way more at hours that I shouldn't have probably, and it was just very helpful. So it was just also the feeling and the thing, like, you don't have to know it. Like, I know I taught you this, but it's cool. Let me explain it to you again. Awesome. And so that just willingness for we're all working towards a mission was wonderful.
You're right. I forgot. Okay, I'll do it later.
That's great. We have Alex Long mentioned that starting the recruitment and outreach process as soon as fall semester begins. That's a really great idea. Thank you. Does anyone else has a question or a comment? You can turn on your mics too.
Well, again, I just want to offer my congratulations and thanks to the advisors. You know, Ken, I've walked a mile in those shoes, and I appreciate. I know you put quite a bit of time in, and so I appreciate all the advisors. It's exciting, and it's a lot of fun to see the evolution of the team and the project and the results. And so I'm excited. I'm encouraged in listening to you all. That this was such a positive experience, and that a couple of you might actually sign up for again. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. I know one of the interesting things that popped up as well was even though we weren't winning, we didn't even get honorable mention, the concepts that we discussed and the pieces of our design showed up in the finalists. They were in the honorable mentions. There were 3 teams from Ohio, at least. I know one other one took down the highway. So there's something in Ohio where we don't like highways. I'm not sure. But just that type of echoes that we weren't off path, and how 90 teams could across the country have similar ideas. And it also gives me hope because it didn't feel like anyone was out to gouge Oakland or get rid of the poor people, or so the value in the development field for positive change really also gave me a bit of hope, because sometimes you just think of a greedy developer, and it was like, wow, no, these are people like that are going in the industry and talking, and we could actually maybe do something good. And so it was just really yeah, very optimistic about what the next set will bring.
For sure, definitely. Thank you so much, everyone. So I think we're gonna close for now. I appreciate everyone that came to see the project. I appreciate the students and all support that we had during this competition. And I hope you all have a great day today. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Hope to see some of you next year's competition.
Yes.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody. Thank you.